The cardboard box in my arms held almost nothing. A coffee mug my daughter painted for me, a phone charger, one folder. I walked past the desks where I'd spent 3 weeks being humiliated, and nobody said a word. Somebody laughed behind me. Sharp, unhurried, the kind of laugh you only let yourself have when you're sure you've already won. I stepped through the glass doors, out into the afternoon light, and set the box down on the concrete railing. Then I pulled out my phone. I wasn't calling a lawyer. I wasn't calling my mom to cry about it. I was calling the one person who could turn that entire building upside down before the sun went down. And in about 4 hours, he was going to prove it. I made one call. I said 3 sentences. And the third one was going to end careers. But you need to understand something first. 6 hours earlier, I didn't even have a job to lose. My name is Logan Carter. I'm 34. I'm a single dad to a 7-year-old girl named Maddie. And for the last 5 years, it's been just the two of us since her mother decided motherhood wasn't the life she wanted. I raised Maddie in a 2-bedroom apartment while I worked overseas consulting contracts, the unglamorous kind, restructuring failing supply chains for companies that didn't care whose life they wrecked as long as the numbers improved. I learned more about how organizations actually work from those jobs than I ever would have sitting behind a mahogany desk somewhere. What almost nobody in that office building knew was that my father is Harrison Carter, 71 years old, the man who built Harrison Global from a 2-truck logistics outfit into one of the largest privately held companies in the country over 40 years. He'd spent 2 years quietly planning to hand the company to me. But he had one condition, and it wasn't negotiable. Whoever took his seat had to understand the company from the bottom, not the top. No title, no office, no warning to anyone. So on a Monday morning, I dropped Maddie at school, put on plain trousers and a button-down that cost less than her sneakers, and walked into Harrison Global's headquarters as Logan Carter, Temporary Operations Associate. Nobody looked at me twice. That was exactly what I wanted. I was assigned to the 14th floor, mid-level operations, compliance, and internal reporting. My supervisor was a woman named Vanessa Brooks, mid-40s, sharp and comfortable in a way that told me she'd been running that floor unchallenged for a long time. She handed me a stack of overdue compliance documents on day 1 and walked off before I could ask a single question. I didn't complain. I sat down. I got to work. By the end of that first week, I'd quietly finished work that had been split between 4 people, and I didn't say a word about it. I just wanted to watch. I wanted to see what kind of place my father had actually built, floor by floor, without anyone performing for the chairman's son, but I had no idea how bad it was about to get. 2 days after I finished that vendor report, 12 hours of untangling other people's mistakes, I overheard Vanessa on a call with the compliance director. "Derek pulled the whole thing together," she said. "Really strong work." Derek Walsh, a man who hadn't touched that report once. I didn't say anything. I closed my laptop and went to get coffee, because I was still learning the shape of the place, and one stolen report wasn't the whole picture yet. It became the pattern. Anything good got claimed by Vanessa's inner circle, Derek, and a quieter operator named Paula Simmons. Anything that went wrong landed on me, whether I'd touched it or not. There was a woman on the floor, Ruth, who'd been there 6 years. One afternoon, Vanessa tore into her in front of the entire team over a formatting mistake that took 90 seconds to fix. Ruth just sat there, face perfectly still, and said, "Understood, I'll correct it." That stillness told me everything. It was practiced. It was a woman who learned that any visible reaction would be used as a weapon against her later. I remember standing at my mother's grave 2 years ago, wondering what kind of world I wanted to leave for Maddie. A world where people like Ruth got crushed quietly while nobody with power even noticed. That thought came back to me hard. Standing on that floor, watching a good employee shrink herself to survive a Tuesday afternoon. 3 weeks in, Vanessa handed me something bigger, leading the documentation for a sensitive internal data audit. I built the tracking system from scratch, 2 days ahead of schedule, and shared editing access with her and Derek so the team could keep working while I finished the final sections. That decision was about to be used to destroy me. On a Thursday morning, I walked in to find Vanessa, Derek, Paula, and HR Director Sandra Put already behind closed blinds. Sandra stepped out and asked me to come in. "There's been a significant data breach," she said. "Restricted client information extracted through your credentials over the last 48 hours. There's a clear audit trail." "Can I see it?" I asked. "It's with legal," Vanessa said, arms crossed, not even looking at me directly. "Not available to you." Sandra slid a termination notice across the desk. I signed it. I asked for a copy. I thanked her. I didn't raise my voice, because I already knew, with absolute certainty, exactly whose fingerprints were really on that breach. That night, sitting in my car with Maddie asleep in the back seat of my mind and my thoughts racing, I made a decision that would change everything. I sat in that parking structure for a long time after the call, not moving, just staring at the cardboard box on the passenger seat. I thought about Maddie, about the years I spent building a life quiet enough that no one could touch us, about coming home that night and having to explain to a 7-year-old why Daddy looked tired in a way she'd never seen before. I wasn't angry. That surprised me more than anything else that day. Anger needs surprise, and I hadn't been surprised. I'd been watching this exact outcome build for 3 weeks, piece by piece, person by person. What hurt wasn't the firing. It was the 12-page audit summary I read later that night, the one that showed this hadn't started with me. It went back 4 years, 11 employees quietly pushed out or held down, 3 formal complaints all buried, all routed back to the very people they were complaining about. 1 employee had been transferred away after raising a concern. 1 had quietly left the company. 1 had accepted a settlement and never been contacted again. Sandra Poot's name was on 2 of those buried complaints. I sat alone in my apartment that night, after Maddie was asleep, reading page after page of exactly how many people had been quietly erased so a handful of managers could keep their comfortable little kingdom running. I realized then, no one was coming to save Ruth. No one was coming to save the man in the corner who'd been silent for 3 years because silence was the only safe option left to him. No one was coming to save any of them. I had to be the one who did. I didn't sleep much that night. By 6 the next morning, I was back inside Harrison Global. Not through the lobby this time, but through the executive elevator, using an access code I'd been given on day 1 and never touched. The general counsel, Martin Cole, met me with the beginning of a legal hold on 4 years of records. Every email, every access log, every performance review, week by week, except this wasn't weeks, this was hours. The evidence built itself, quietly, methodically. IT pulled the real access logs on the data breach, and the picture came together fast. My credentials, yes, but logged in from a terminal that had never once been mine. Darius terminal. It wasn't sophisticated. It worked because nobody on that floor had ever been seriously examined before. I called a company-wide meeting for 4 o'clock. The message that went out gave nothing away, just that the founding chairman had an announcement about the company's future leadership on the 14th floor. Vanessa held court near the windows, telling anyone who'd listen that transitions like this usually reward people who'd demonstrated real value. Derek laughed at something she said. Paula refreshed her email. None of them connected a company-wide announcement to the employee they'd fired that morning. They had no idea what was coming. The atrium was packed by 3:50. I stood in the side corridor with Martin, watching through a gap in the partition. Vanessa stood near the center of the room with the easy posture of someone expecting good news. Derek beside her, Paula a few feet back. My father walked onto the platform at exactly 4 o'clock, and the room went quiet before he even said a word. He thanked the company for 40 years of work. Then he said, the next chairman of Harrison Global had been inside this building for the past 3 weeks, learning it from the inside out. He asked his son to come forward. I walked onto that stage in the same clothes I'd been fired in that morning. I carried nothing. And then the room went completely silent. It was the specific silence of several hundred people trying to process something that didn't fit any category they had ready for it. I watched Vanessa's face change in real time. Recognition, then calculation, then something with no clean name at all. I didn't come up there to enjoy the moment. I came up there to start the work. I introduced myself. My background. The 3 weeks, Paul and I stepped aside and let Martin Cole take the floor. He explained calmly and precisely that the legal department had uncovered a fabricated data breach used to terminate an employee without cause, and that the deeper review it triggered had revealed a 4-year pattern of retaliation, credit theft, and buried complaints on the 14th floor. 7 individuals had already been placed on administrative suspension the evening before. He named no one from that stage. He didn't have to. Vanessa already knew. I stood there and thought about that afternoon, weeks earlier, walking a cardboard box out of a building where I'd been made to feel invisible on purpose. I thought about Ruth's face perfectly still, absorbing a public humiliation that had nothing to do with her competence. Fire every one of them. That's what I'd said on the phone that afternoon, standing on those front steps. Now, finally, the whole room understood exactly what those 4 words had meant. By the end of that week, Vanessa, Derek, Paula, and 4 others who'd participated at various levels were formally terminated, each notice specific, each one naming the exact contact behind it. Not a vague corporate goodbye. The 2 employees who'd been pushed out years earlier were contacted directly and made whole. Sandra Poots stayed on, but under a formal review that would decide her future for her. I walked the 14th floor myself the next morning and told the people still standing there exactly what was changing. A new reporting line that skipped middle management entirely, a review of every performance record for the last 4 years, and a promise that silence would never again be the only safe option in that building. Ruth raised her hand, asked if the review would undo decisions already made against people who'd been passed over. Yes, I told her. She lowered her hand. Something in her face let go just slightly for the first time in longer than she probably remembered. It's been 2 months now. I still keep that cardboard box on the corner of my desk on the 32nd floor. The mug, the charger, the folder. Not because they matter, because they remind me what it felt like to be made small on purpose, and why I never want anyone else in that building to feel it again. Maddie doesn't know most of the details. She just knows Daddy has a new office with a really big window, and that some of the not nice people don't work there anymore. I didn't take this job for the title. I took it because my father spent 40 years learning that a company's real value was never on the balance sheet. It was in whether the people inside it trusted each other. I had to walk in as nobody to understand what that actually meant. I didn't get an apology from Vanessa. I got something better. I got the chance to make sure the next person who tells the truth on that floor doesn't have to carry their whole life out in a cardboard box to be believed.